The rain came down hard on Highway 50 that Wednesday morning, the kind of rain that turned the Nevada desert into something dark and uncertain. Inside Coleman's diner, the smell of coffee and bacon grease hung thick in the air, mixing with the rumble of Harley engines idling outside. Jake Morrison sat with his back to the wall, like always. 58 years old, scar running down the left side of his face like a question mark from Fallujah. His hands wrapped around a coffee cup, black, no sugar. The leather vest he wore carried the patches of a life lived hard. Hell's Angels, Carson City chapter, president. Behind him, 6 brothers from the chapter filled 2 booths. Cisco, Tiny, Wrench, Danny, Preacher, Billy. Men who'd followed Jake through hell more than once. Men who understood that some debts could never be repaid, only honored. Ruth Coleman moved between the tables with the quiet efficiency of someone who'd been doing this for 40 years. 72 years old, silver hair pulled back tight, hands steady as they ever were. She'd opened this diner in 1984 with her first husband, kept it running through his death, through her second marriage to David Morrison, through his death too. The place was small, 12 booths, a counter with 8 stools, pie case by the register, but it was hers. She brought Jake his usual without asking. Steak and eggs, over easy, hash browns, wheat toast. Set it down in front of him with the same quiet nod she'd given him every Wednesday for the past 3 years. "Thank you, ma'am," Jake said. Ruth's eyes lingered on him for just a second longer than usual. Something in her expression Jake couldn't quite read. Then she moved on to the next table, refilling coffee, taking orders, doing the work that had defined her life. Jake cut into his steak. The first bite was halfway to his mouth when he felt it. The weight of someone watching. Not his brothers, not the truckers at the counter, someone else. His eyes swept the diner without moving his head, training from another life, another war. There in the corner booth by the window, a man in a black suit, too clean for this place, too still. Phone in his hand, but he wasn't looking at it. He was looking at Jake. Jake's jaw tightened. He set down his fork. The kitchen door swung open. Ruth emerged, carrying 2 plates, but her eyes weren't on where she was going. They were locked on the man in the black suit. Her face had gone pale. She walked straight to Jake's table, didn't set down the plates, just stood there, and when she reached out, her hand landed on Jake's shoulder with a grip that surprised him. Jake looked up at her. Ruth's voice came out low, quiet, steady as stone. 4 words that would change everything. Don't talk. Don't eat. The diner seemed to hold its breath. Jake's brothers at the next booth heard it. Cisco's hand moved instinctively toward his waist. Tiny shifted his weight, ready to stand. Ruth's eyes locked with Jake's. In 40 years of serving strangers their breakfast, she'd learned to read people. Fear, lies, violence. She could see it all in the way they held their fork, the way they avoided eye contact, the way their hands trembled when they reached for their wallet. Now those eyes were telling Jake Morrison something he'd only seen once before, in the split second before an IED went off in Fallujah. Trust me or die. Jake didn't move, didn't reach for his steak, didn't ask questions. Ruth lifted the bowl of soup, chicken noodle, lunch special even though it was morning, and without a word, she tipped it over. The bowl clattered against the table, soup spilling across the formica, splashing onto Jake's plate, soaking into the tablecloth. The entire diner went silent. The man in the black suit stood up. Fast. Too fast. "Who went into my kitchen?" Ruth's voice cut through the silence like a blade. The man in the black suit was already moving toward the door. Jake was faster. He rose from his seat, and even at 58, even with the leg that ached when the weather turned cold, he moved like the Marine he'd been 30 years ago. 3 strides, and he had the man by the collar, slammed him against the doorframe hard enough to rattle the glass. "Where you going, friend?" The man's eyes went wide. Panic. Real, animal panic. Cisco and Tiny were up now, blocking the other exit. The truckers at the counter watched, coffee cups frozen halfway to their mouths. Nobody in Carson City interfered when the angels were handling business. Ruth moved toward the kitchen, her heart hammering but her hands steady. She pushed through the swinging door and stopped. The big stock pot on the stove, the one she used for soup, sat exactly where she'd left it. But next to it, barely visible on the metal prep counter, was a small plastic bag. Empty now, residue of white powder clinging to the inside. Her grandmother's voice came back to her from 50 years ago, teaching a young girl about the plants that grew in the Cherokee Hills, the ones that healed, the ones that killed. She'd smelled it the moment she lifted the soup bowl. Bitter, chemical, not quite masked by the chicken broth and herbs. Arsenic. Ruth picked up the bag with a dish towel, careful not to touch it, and walked back into the dining room. Jake still had the man pinned against the door. The man was talking now, words tumbling out fast and desperate. "I don't know anything, man, I swear. Just $500, that's all. Just put something in the pot, that's what he said. Easy money." I didn't ask questions. "Who paid you?" Jake's voice was quiet, the kind of quiet that meant violence was a heartbeat away. "I don't know his name, just a voice on the phone. Told me which diner, told me what to do, left the money in a locker at the bus station." "You're lying." "I'm not, I swear to God." Cisco moved in close, his face inches from the man's. Cisco had been special forces before the angels. He knew 1,000 ways to make a man tell the truth. What did the voice sound like? I don't know. Deep. Older, maybe. He said it was for Morrison. Said Morrison had it coming. Jake's grip tightened on the man's collar. Morrison. That's all he said, I swear. Morrison. The biker. Ruth stepped forward, holding up the plastic bag. "Sheriff needs to see this." Jake looked at her, really looked at her. This 72-year-old woman who just saved his life, without raising her voice, without hesitation, without fear. "How did you know?" he asked. Ruth met his eyes. "My grandmother was Cherokee, taught me about plants, about medicine, about poison. I've been making soup in that kitchen for 40 years. I know what belongs in my pot and what doesn't." She turned to the man Jake was still holding. "You put this in my soup." "Lady, I'm sorry, I didn't." "You put poison in my soup, in my kitchen, in my home." The word hung in the air. Home. Jake released the man but didn't step back. "Cisco, tie him up. We'll wait for the sheriff." Sheriff Martin Wade arrived 20 minutes later, lights flashing, no siren. He was 62, thick around the middle, 10 months from retirement. He'd known Jake Morrison since Jake was a boy running wild to Carson City with his father David, trying to keep him straight. Wade took one look at the scene, the man tied to a chair with electrical cord, the plastic bag on the table, Jake and his brothers standing in a semicircle, and sighed. "Tell me you didn't kill anybody." "Not yet," Jake said. Wade listened to Ruth's story, examined the plastic bag, called in a deputy to take the man into custody. When it was done, he pulled Jake aside, away from the others. "This is attempted murder, Jake. FBI will want to know about it." "I know. You have enemies. I know that too." Wade glanced at Ruth, who was cleaning up the spilled soup with methodical precision, like she could scrub away what had almost happened. "She saved your life." "I know. You owe her." Jake's jaw tightened. "I know." Wade left. The deputies left. The truckers paid their bills and left. Soon it was just Jake, his brothers, and Ruth in the empty diner. Ruth poured fresh coffee, set a cup in front of Jake, sat down across from him for the first time in 3 years of Wednesday breakfasts. "You know who wants you dead?" she asked. "I've got a list." "A long one?" "Long enough." Ruth wrapped her hands around her own coffee cup. "But you know who it is." It wasn't a question. Jake nodded slowly. "Vincent Castellano." The name meant nothing to Ruth. Jake saw it in her face. 6 months ago, Jake said, we found a truck on I-80, refrigerated semi, stopped for gas just outside of Fernley. Driver was nervous, too nervous. Tiny noticed it, flagged me down. He took a sip of coffee. The memory was still sharp. We checked the truck, found 12 girls inside, young, scared. Some of them didn't speak English. They'd been bought, sold, shipped across state lines like cargo. Ruth's face went pale. We called the FBI. They came, took the girls, arrested the driver. The driver gave up his boss. The boss gave up his boss. The whole thing unraveled. They took down a trafficking ring that stretched from California to New York. Dozens of arrests. Hundreds of girls saved. In Castellano? Vincent Castellano was running it. The FBI couldn't prove it directly. He had too many layers, too many people between him and the product. But they shut down his operation. Cost him millions. Cost him his empire. Jake's hand moved to the Colt 1911 at his hip, the gun his father had carried in the war, the gun David Morrison had given him the day he left for the Gulf. He swore he'd make me pay. 3 months ago, Tommy Wrench got hit by a truck. Texting and driving, they said. Tommy's been riding bikes for 30 years. Never had an accident. 2 months ago, Rico got food poisoning at a bar in Reno. Went into a coma. They said it was bad shellfish. Rico's gut is iron. Ruth listened, her face unreadable. And today, someone tried to poison me in your diner. The words settled between them like stones. Ruth stood up, walked to the register, came back with something small in her hand, set it on the table in front of Jake. A Zippo lighter. Old, scratched, the chrome worn down to brass in places. Engraved on the side, D.M. Semper Fi, 1970. Jake stared at it. His hand moved toward it but stopped, hovering above the lighter like it might burn him. Where did you get this? Ruth sat back down. Your father gave it to me, the day we got married. Time seemed to stop. Jake looked up at her, really looked, saw something in her face he'd missed before. Something in the way she held herself, the way she'd moved through the diner like it was a battlefield she knew by heart. You were married to my father. David Morrison, yes. Jake's throat tightened. He never told me. You were in Iraq when we met, Afghanistan when we married. He wanted to tell you, but you never came home. Not until after he died. The words hit like a punch. Jake had been 23 when he shipped out to the Gulf, 29 when he went back for the second tour. His father had written letters, sent care packages, called when the satellite phones were working. But Jake had been young, angry, convinced he was saving the world while his father grew old in Carson City. David Morrison had died in 2010. Heart attack. Quick, the doctor said. No pain. Jake had gotten the call in Kandahar, made it back 5 days later, 5 days too late. He talked about you, Ruth said quietly. Every day. He was proud of you. Jake's jaw clenched. I didn't make it back for his funeral. He understood. He was a Marine. He knew what duty meant. They sat in silence. Outside, the rain had stopped. Sunlight broke through the clouds, casting long shadows across the empty parking lot. Why didn't you say anything? Jake asked. I've been coming here for 3 years. Ruth's fingers traced the rim of her coffee cup. You were grieving. Still are, I think. I didn't want to add to it. Didn't want to force myself into your life as some stepmother you never knew existed. You're not forcing anything. You saved my life today. And now you feel like you owe me. I do owe you. Ruth looked at him then, and Jake saw something in her eyes he recognized. The same look his father used to get when he was trying to decide whether to speak hard truth or let something lie. David used to say, Ruth began, that a man is only as strong as his promises. That honor isn't about what you do when people are watching. It's about what you do when it costs you something. Jake nodded. Those were his father's words, all right. He'd heard them 100 times growing up. I don't need you to owe me anything, Jake, but I do need you to be careful. Whoever wants you dead, they know where you eat breakfast. They know your routines. They're not going to stop. I know. Do you? Because from where I'm sitting, you look like a man who's been waiting for an excuse to go to war. The words hung between them, sharp and true. Jake stood up, put 2 20s on the table, twice what breakfast cost. "Thank you, ma'am, for the warning, for the soup, for everything." He started toward the door. "Jake." He stopped. Ruth stood too, walked over to him, pressed the Zippo lighter into his palm. "Your father always carried this, said it saved his life more times than he could count. Not because it was magic, because every time he lit a cigarette, every time he felt the weight of it in his pocket, it reminded him what he had to live for." Jake closed his fingers around the lighter. It was warm from her hand. "What did he have to live for?" Ruth smiled, sad and small. "Coming home." Jake left Coleman's diner at 7:30. His brothers followed, 6 Harleys rumbling to life in the parking lot. They rode in formation, Jake at the front, heading north on Highway 50 toward the garage, where the chapter kept their bikes and their business. The rain had left the road slick and dark. Steam rose from the asphalt as the sun climbed higher. Jake's mind was a storm. Vincent Castellano. The name sat in his chest like a tumor. Castellano was old Vegas money, old mob connections, old enough to have survived 3 FBI investigations without a single charge sticking. He ran his trafficking operation like a corporation. Layers of managers, shell companies, plausible deniability at every level. But Jake had cost him something Castellano couldn't buy back: reputation. In the underworld, when a biker gang shut down your operation and walked away clean, you looked weak. Weak men didn't stay in power long. The garage came into view, a low cinder block building at the edge of town, Morrison's Cycles, painted in faded letters across the front. Jake had bought it 10 years ago with money from his father's life insurance. Ran it clean, legal, fixing bikes and selling parts. The chapter used the back room for meetings. He pulled into the lot, killed the engine. His brothers parked in a line beside him. Inside, the garage smelled like motor oil and leather. 3 bikes in various states of repair sat on lifts. Tools hung on pegboards. In the corner office, a desk buried under invoices and order forms. Jake didn't go to the office. He walked straight to the back room, and his brothers followed. The room was simple. A long table made from an old door, folding chairs, a mini fridge stocked with beer. On the wall, a flag, the Hells Angels' death's head, red and white, fierce and proud. Jake sat at the head of the table. Cisco took the seat to his right, Tiny to his left. The others filled in. This was how it worked. This was the order of things. "We've got a problem," Jake said. Nobody spoke. They already knew. "Castellano put a hit on me. Failed today because Ruth Coleman's got sharper eyes than his hired help. Won't fail next time." Tiny cracked his knuckles. Tiny was 6'4", 280 pounds of muscle and scar tissue. 65 years old and still the meanest man Jake had ever met. Except when it came to protecting the chapter, then he was a saint. "We go to Castellano," Tiny rumbled. "End this." "Can't prove it was him," Cisco said. Guy at the diner said it was a voice on the phone. No name, no evidence. Sheriff's got nothing to hold him on. "Since when do we need evidence?" Preacher asked. Preacher was 61, balding, soft-spoken. Used to be a minister before the drinking and the divorce and the road led him to the angels. He still quoted scripture when the mood struck him. He also knew 17 ways to break a man's arm. Jake held up a hand. "We don't go after Castellano blind. That's what he wants. He wants us to come at him so he can claim self-defense, get us locked up or buried." "So what do we do?" Danny asked. Danny was the youngest of them, 52, still had most of his teeth. "Just wait for him to try again?" Jake leaned back in his chair, thought about Ruth Coleman, thought about the lighter in his pocket, warm against his ribs. "We do what we do best," Jake said. "We ride, we watch, we wait. And when Castellano makes his next move, we're ready." The men nodded. It wasn't the answer they wanted, but it was the answer they trusted. The meeting broke up. The brothers drifted back to their lives. Cisco to his security job, Tiny to his construction crew, Danny to his shifts at the auto shop. Jake stayed behind, alone in the back room. He pulled out the Zippo lighter, turned it over in his hands. The engraving was worn, but still legible. D.M. Semper Fi, 1970. David Morrison, his father. A man who'd survived the war, raised a son alone after Jake's mother left, tried to teach that son about honor and duty and what it meant to be a man. Jake had learned those lessons the hard way. In the desert, in the blood, in the screaming chaos of a firefight where the only thing that mattered was the man beside you. He'd come home from Iraq, a ghost. PTSD, the doctors called it. Jake called it the cost of war. He drifted for years, from job to job, from bar to bar, until the angels had found him, given him a purpose, a brotherhood. But his father had been dead by then, and now Ruth, his father's widow, a woman he'd seen 100 times, served him breakfast, smiled politely, and never once said, "I loved your father. I was there when he died. I cleaned out his apartment. I buried him." Jake's hand closed around the lighter. The storm in his chest grew darker. That night, Jake couldn't sleep. He lay in bed in his small apartment above the garage, staring at the ceiling, listening to the sound of trucks on the highway. At 11 o'clock, his phone buzzed. "Unknown number," he answered. "Yeah?" Heavy breathing on the other end. Then a voice, deep and rough, filtered through some kind of distortion. "Morrison." Jake sat up. "I'm listening. You cost me a lot of money." Castellano. A low laugh. "You're smarter than you look. What do you want?" "I want you to know something. Today was just the first try. There'll be others. I've got patience. I've got resources. And I've got nothing but time." Jake's grip on the phone tightened. "You come at me, you better not miss." "Oh, I won't miss forever. But here's the thing, Morrison. I'm not just coming at you. See, I learned something about you. You've got a weakness. You care about people." Jake's blood went cold. "Yeah," the voice continued. "I know about Ruth Coleman. Cute little diner, cute little old lady. Be a shame if something happened to her. Or maybe to that granddaughter of hers. What's her name? Lily?" The world stopped. "You touch them." "You'll what? Come at me? Please do. I'm begging you. Give me a reason." The line went dead. Jake was on his feet, jeans on, boots laced, jacket grabbed from the chair. He took the stairs 2 at a time, kicked open the garage door, threw his leg over his bike. The Harley roared to life. Jake tore out of the lot, heading south on Highway 50 toward Ruth's house. She lived 10 minutes outside town, a small ranch house with a white fence and a garden. Jake had never been there, but he'd looked it up after learning she was his father's widow. Some part of him had wanted to know where his father had spent his last years. The house was dark when Jake pulled up. 1:15 in the morning. The porch light was on, moths circling it in lazy spirals. Jake killed the engine. Stood in the driveway, heart hammering. What was he doing here? What was he going to say? "Hey, I just got a death threat and it involves you and your granddaughter. Thought I'd stop by in the middle of the night?" He turned to leave. The porch light flickered on. The front door opened. Ruth stood there in a bathrobe, hair down, a shotgun in her hands. "Jake Morrison," she said calmly, "you planning to stand in my driveway all night? Or you want to tell me what's wrong?" Jake walked up the steps, stopped at the edge of the porch. Ruth lowered the shotgun, but didn't put it down. "Castellano called me," Jake said. "He knows about you, about Lily." Ruth's face didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes. Fear, maybe, or fury. "Come inside," she said. The house was small but clean. Photos on the walls, Ruth and David on their wedding day, younger and smiling. Lily as a baby, as a child, as a teenager. A flag in a triangle case presented at David Morrison's funeral. Ruth set the shotgun by the door, gestured for Jake to sit at the kitchen table, poured 2 glasses of whiskey without asking. They sat across from each other, the silence heavy. "Tell me everything," Ruth said. Jake told her. The call, the threat, Castellano's promise that this wasn't over. When he finished, Ruth took a long sip of whiskey, set the glass down with a sharp click. "Lily's upstairs, asleep. She's 16, smart, wants to go to UCLA, study medicine. She's the only family I have left." "I'll protect her," Jake said. "Will you? Against a man like Castellano?" "I'll do whatever it takes." Ruth studied him, saw something in his face that made her nod. "You're like your father. David would have said the same thing." "Did he?" "Every day." Ruth's voice softened. "When he was sick, toward the end, he made me promise something. He said, if Jake ever needs help, you help him. No questions, no hesitation. He's my son, and he's worth saving." Jake's throat tightened. "I didn't know if I'd ever have to keep that promise," Ruth continued. "You and I, we were strangers. But today in the diner, when I saw that man watching you, when I smelled that poison in my soup, I knew. This was the moment David meant." She reached across the table, put her hand over Jake's. "So here's my promise to you. You protect Lily, and I'll help you however I can. We're family, Jake, whether you knew it or not." Jake looked down at their hands. Hers were small, wrinkled, strong. His were scarred, rough, shaking just slightly. "Okay," he said. "Okay." They sat like that for a long moment. Then headlights swept across the kitchen window. Ruth stiffened. Jake was on his feet, hand moving to the Colt at his hip. A car pulled into the driveway. Doors opened. Voices. Jake moved to the window, looked out. 2 sheriff's deputies. And between them, being led out of the back of a patrol car, was Lily. Ruth was already at the door, shotgun forgotten, face pale. The deputy, a young woman Jake didn't recognize, brought Lily up the steps. Lily was crying, makeup smeared, wearing a dress too short and heels too high for a 16-year-old. "Miss Coleman," the deputy said, "we found Lily at a party in Reno. Underage drinking. We're releasing her to your custody, but she'll need to appear in court." Ruth took Lily by the shoulders, looked her over, checking for injuries. "Are you hurt?" "No, Grandma, I'm fine. I'm sorry. I didn't mean—" "Inside. Now." Lily stumbled inside. Ruth thanked the deputies, closed the door, and turned to her granddaughter with a fury Jake had never seen in her before. "What were you thinking?" "I'm sorry. I just wanted—" "You're 16 years old. You have no business being in Reno, no business drinking, no business—" "I know. I'm sorry." Jake stood to the side, feeling like an intruder. But Ruth glanced at him, and he saw something in her eyes. Not anger, fear. Because if Castellano knew about Lily, if he was watching, if he had people in Reno— Ruth saw it too. Her face went white. She turned to Lily. "Who invited you to this party?" "Just some friends." "What friends?" "You don't know them." "Lily, what friends?" Lily's voice went small. "A guy I met at school, Brandon. He said there was a party, that I should come, that it'd be fun." "Brandon who?" "I don't know his last name. He's new. He's older, like 19. He's really cool, Grandma. He—" Ruth grabbed Lily's phone from her purse, started scrolling through messages. Jake moved closer, looked over Ruth's shoulder. The messages from Brandon were innocent enough at first. "Hey, you're cute. Want to hang out?" Standard teenager stuff. But then, 3 days ago, "There's a party Friday in Reno. You should come. I'll pick you up." And yesterday, "Don't tell your grandma. It'll be more fun if it's our secret." Ruth's hands shook as she scrolled further. The last message, sent 2 hours ago. "Sorry I had to leave early. Hope you got home okay." Jake's instincts screamed. "Ruth, let me see the phone." She handed it over. Jake opened Brandon's contact info. No last name, no profile picture. The number had a Nevada area code, but that didn't mean anything. He texted the number. "This is Lily's family. We need to talk. The response came back immediately. Number no longer in service. Jake's jaw clenched. He looked at Ruth. This wasn't a party. This was a setup. What are you talking about? Lily asked, fear creeping into her voice. Ruth pulled her granddaughter into a hug, held her tight. Baby, I need you to listen to me very carefully. That boy, Brandon, he wasn't your friend. He was using you. What? No, Jake, Ruth said quietly. Tell her. Jake crouched down so he was eye level with Lily. There's a man who wants to hurt me. His name is Vincent Castellano. He's dangerous. He runs a trafficking ring, kidnapping girls, selling them. The party you went to tonight, that might have been one of his traps. Lily's face went pale. No, that's not. Brandon wouldn't. Did Brandon give you anything to drink? Ruth asked. Just a soda. He brought it to me. Did you drink it? A little. It tasted weird, so I stopped. Ruth closed her eyes. Thank God. Jake stood up, walked to the window, looked out at the dark street, the shadows between houses, the places where men could hide and watch. We need to move Lily, he said. Tonight, somewhere Castellano doesn't know about. Where? Ruth asked. Jake thought fast. The garage. The chapter keeps a couple of rooms in back for brothers who need a place to crash. She'll be safe there. We'll post guards. You want me to send my granddaughter to live in a biker clubhouse? I want to keep her alive. The words hung in the air like a blade. Ruth looked at Lily, looked at Jake, made a decision. Pack a bag, she told Lily. You've got 5 minutes. Lily started to protest, but Ruth's expression stopped her. She ran upstairs. Ruth turned to Jake. If anything happens to her, it won't. If it does, there's no place on earth you'll be able to hide from me. Jake nodded. Understood. 4 minutes later, Lily came back down with a backpack. Ruth grabbed a few things from the kitchen, food, water, a first aid kit. The three of them piled into Ruth's truck, Ruth driving, Jake in the passenger seat, Lily in back. They made it halfway to the garage when Jake's phone rang. Unknown number. He answered. Yeah, that same distorted voice. Morrison, I know you're in the truck with Ruth and her pretty little granddaughter. Wave at the camera. Jake's blood turned to ice. He looked around. Streetlights, closed shops, darkness. Where are you? He demanded. Everywhere. I told you, I've got resources. I've got patience. And now I've got Lily's attention. If you touch her, I won't have to touch her. She'll come to me, just like she almost did tonight. The call ended. Jake looked at Ruth. Drive faster. They reached the garage at 2 in the morning. Jake's brothers were already there. He'd called them on the way. Cisco, Tiny, Wrench, Preacher, Danny, Billy. 7 men standing in the parking lot with weapons and grim faces. Jake helped Lily out of the truck. She was shaking, crying quietly. You're safe here, he told her. I promise. Inside, they set Lily up in the back room. Sleeping bag on a cot, bottled water, granola bars. It wasn't much, but it had 4 walls and 6 armed bikers between her and the world. Ruth sat beside her granddaughter, brushed hair out of her face. I'm not leaving you. I'm sorry, Grandma, I didn't know. I know, baby, I know. Jake stepped outside with his brothers. They formed a circle in the garage, under the fluorescent lights. What's the play? Cisco asked. Jake's hand moved to the Colt at his hip, then to the Zippo in his pocket. Thought about his father. Thought about honor. Castellano wants a war. We're going to give him one. But we do it smart. We find Lily's friend Brandon. We track him back to Castellano. And then we end this. Tiny grinned. Now you're talking. But Wrench shook his head. Jake, Castellano's got an army. We're 7 guys. 8, Ruth said from the doorway. You're 8. They all turned. Ruth stood there, backlit by the room where Lily was sleeping, shotgun in her hands. This is my fight too. she said quietly. That man threatened my granddaughter, tried to kill you in my diner. David Morrison was a Marine. He taught me that you don't run from a fight when it comes to your door. Jake looked at her, saw his father in her eyes, saw the steel that had kept her running a diner for 40 years, that had raised a granddaughter alone, that had saved his life with 4 quiet words. All right, he said. 8 of us. The brothers nodded. Jake pulled out his phone. Sent a message to Sheriff Wade. We need to talk. Tomorrow morning. It's about Castellano. Then he looked at his makeshift army. A 72-year-old widow, 6 aging bikers, and himself, a 58-year-old Marine who'd left his best years in the desert. It wasn't much, but it would have to be enough. Because somewhere out in the Nevada night, Vincent Castellano was watching, waiting, planning his next move. And Jake Morrison had just made a promise he intended to keep, no matter what it cost. Morning came cold and gray over Carson City. Jake hadn't slept. He'd spent the night in the garage office, Colt 1911 on the desk, watching the security cameras that Wrench had rigged up years ago. 4 screens showing 4 angles of the parking lot, the street, the back alley. Nothing moved except the occasional car passing on the highway. At 6 o'clock, Ruth emerged from the back room. She'd slept in a chair beside Lily's cot, shotgun across her lap. Her silver hair was disheveled, her face lined with exhaustion, but her eyes were sharp. Coffee? Jake asked. Please. He poured 2 cups from the pot Cisco had made an hour earlier. They sat across from each other at the cluttered desk, papers and invoices pushed aside to make room. Lily? Jake asked. Still sleeping. Poor thing cried herself out around 4. Jake nodded, sipped his coffee. It was bitter and strong, the way he liked it. Sheriff Wade's coming at 8, he said. We need a plan. Ruth wrapped her hands around her cup. What kind of plan? The kind that keeps Lily safe and puts Castellano in the ground. Legal ground or actual ground? Jake met her eyes, saw that she already knew the answer, saw that she was asking anyway because she needed to hear him say it. Whichever one works. Ruth nodded slowly. David used to say there's a difference between the law and justice. He said sometimes a man has to choose which one he serves. What did you say to that? I said justice doesn't mean much if you're dead or in prison. Smart woman. Smart enough to know when I'm outmatched. Ruth leaned forward. Jake, I appreciate what you're doing, what your brothers are doing. But Castellano has money, power, connections. He survived 3 FBI investigations. What makes you think 7 bikers and a diner owner can take him down? Because we're not trying to put him in court, Jake said quietly. We're trying to make him stop. There's a difference. The garage door rattled. Cisco appeared, phone in hand. Jake got something. They followed him into the main workspace. The other brothers were gathered around Wrench's laptop, which sat open on a tool bench. Wrench was typing fast, his fingers flying across the keyboard. Found Brandon, Wrench said without looking up. Or at least, found the phone number Lily was texting, traced it back to a burner purchased at a Walmart in Reno 3 weeks ago. Security footage shows a kid, maybe 19, brown hair, 6 feet tall. Paid cash. That's not enough, Jake said. I'm not done. Wrench pulled up another screen. Cross-referenced the purchase time with other cameras in the area. Followed the kid out to the parking lot. He got into a black Honda Civic, Nevada plates. Ran the plates, registered to a Marcus Webb, 22 years old, address in Sparks. Cisco grinned. Now we're cooking. Jake pulled out his phone, texted Sheriff Wade. Need to postpone. Something came up. We'll call you later. The response came back immediately. Jake, don't do anything stupid. Jake didn't reply. He turned to his brothers. Tiny, Danny, you're with me. Cisco, Preacher, Billy, you stay here with Ruth and Lily. Wrench, keep digging. Find everything you can on Marcus Webb. Who he works for, where he goes, who he talks to. What about Brandon? Ruth asked. Brandon's probably Marcus's real name or close to it. Either way, we're going to have a conversation with Mr. Webb. Ruth stood up. I'm coming with you. No, Jake. Ruth, I need you here, with Lily. She trusts you. She doesn't trust us. Ruth's jaw tightened, but she nodded. You bring him back alive. I want to look him in the eye. Can't promise that. Try. Jake grabbed his leather vest from the back of a chair, slid it on, felt the weight of the patches, the history, Hell's Angels, Carson City, President. These weren't just decorations. They were a code, a promise, a warning. Tiny and Danny mounted their bikes. Jake fired up his Harley, the engine roaring to life like a beast waking from sleep. They rolled out of the garage in formation, 3 bikes cutting through the morning traffic, heading north toward Sparks. The ride took 40 minutes. Sparks was a smaller city just east of Reno, blue collar and rough around the edges. The kind of place where people minded their own business and didn't ask questions. Marcus Webb's address was a rundown apartment complex off 5th Street. 2 stories, peeling paint, cars on blocks in the parking lot. Jake pulled up across the street, killed the engine. Apartment 12, he said. 2nd floor, east side. Tiny cracked his knuckles. How do you want to play this? Quiet. We knock. We talk. We see what he knows. And if he doesn't want to talk? Jake's hand moved to the Colt at his hip. Then we improvise. They climbed the exterior stairs, boots heavy on the metal. Apartment 12 had a busted peephole and a door that didn't quite sit flush in the frame. Jake could hear a television inside, some morning talk show. He knocked. 3 times, firm but not aggressive. Footsteps, the sound of a chain being unlatched. The door opened 6 inches, still held by the security chain. A young man's face appeared in the gap. Brown hair, stubble, tired eyes. Marcus Webb. Yeah? Marcus Webb? Who's asking? Jake didn't answer. He slammed his shoulder into the door. The chain snapped, the door flew open, and Marcus stumbled backward with a yelp. Tiny was through the door first, grabbing Marcus by the front of his shirt and slamming him against the wall. Danny swept the apartment, checking the bedroom and bathroom. Came back shaking his head. Nobody else home. Jake stepped inside, closed the door behind him. Marcus was hyperventilating, eyes wide with terror. What the hell, man? I didn't do anything. You know a girl named Lily Coleman? Marcus's face went white. I'll take that as a yes, Jake said. You invited her to a party in Reno. Gave her a drink. What was in the drink, Marcus? I don't know what you're talking about. Tiny lifted Marcus off his feet, still pinned against the wall. Wrong answer. Okay, Jesus. I was just supposed to get her to the party, that's all. I didn't know what they were gonna do. Who's they? Marcus's eyes darted toward the door, like he was calculating his chances of escape. They were 0. A guy, Marcus stammered. I don't know his name. He paid me $500 to befriend Lily at school, invite her to the party, make sure she had something to drink. That's it, I swear. What was in the drink? I don't know. The guy said it was just a prank, that Lily's family was uptight, that we were helping her have fun. And you believed him. He paid me. I needed the money. Jake released him. Marcus collapsed to his knees, gasping for air. The man who hired you, Jake said. Describe him. Tall, maybe 40, dark hair, slicked back, expensive suit, drove a black Mercedes. Name. He never told me, just gave me the cash and the instructions. Phone number. Burner. I tried calling it yesterday. Out of service. Jake looked at Tiny. Tiny shrugged. The kid was probably telling the truth. Low level, expendable, didn't know anything useful. But Jake needed to be sure. Marcus, I'm going to ask you one more question, and if you lie to me, my friend Tiny here is going to break both your legs. Understand? Marcus nodded frantically. Have you delivered girls to parties before? A long pause. Marcus's eyes filled with tears. How many? Jake's voice was ice. 3, maybe 4. I don't know, I didn't keep count. Tiny made a disgusted sound. Danny looked away. Jake pulled the Colt from his hip, aimed it at Marcus's head. Marcus screamed, "Please, please, I'll do anything. I'll testify. I'll tell the cops everything." "The cops won't protect you from Castellano. I don't even know who that is." "The man who hired you works for Vincent Castellano. Castellano runs the trafficking ring. The parties you sent those girls to, they weren't parties, they were auctions." Marcus threw up, right there on his own carpet, retching and sobbing. Jake lowered the gun, not because he felt mercy, because killing Marcus wouldn't bring those girls back, wouldn't protect Lily, wouldn't stop Castellano. He crouched down beside Marcus. "Here's what's going to happen. You're going to tell me everything you know about the man who hired you, where you met him, when, what kind of car, what he sounded like, anything. And then you're going to pack a bag and disappear. You're going to leave Nevada and never come back. Because if I see you again, I won't ask questions. I'll just pull the trigger." Marcus nodded, still crying, snot running down his face. "Now talk." It took 20 minutes. Marcus told them everything. The first contact had been at a bar in Reno called the Lucky 7. The man had approached Marcus, said he had an opportunity for a young guy who needed cash. All Marcus had to do was befriend certain girls at Carson City High School, gain their trust, invite them to parties. 500 per girl, easy money. Marcus had done it 4 times before Lily. 2 of those girls never came home. Their families filed missing persons reports. The police investigated, found nothing. The man always drove a black Mercedes S-Class, Nevada vanity plates. Marcus had written down the plate number once, just in case, kept it in his wallet like insurance. Jake took the wallet, found the scrap of paper. Night 7. "That's everything," Marcus said. "I swear to God that's everything I know." Jake stood up, looked at Tiny and Danny. "We're done here." They left Marcus Webb crying on his living room floor. Didn't call the police, didn't burn the place down. Just walked out, got on their bikes, and rode away. On the highway back to Carson City, Jake's phone rang. Wrench. "Jake, you need to get back here, now." "What happened?" "Ruth is gone." Jake's blood turned to ice. "What do you mean, gone?" "She left 20 minutes ago, said she needed to go to the diner, get some supplies. Cisco offered to go with her, but she said no. She took her truck. We've been calling her phone, no answer." "Lily?" "Still here, safe, but she's asking for Ruth." Jake gunned the throttle. The Harleys screamed as he accelerated past 80, past 90. Tiny and Danny struggled to keep up. They reached Coleman's diner in 12 minutes. Ruth's truck was in the parking lot. The front door was unlocked. The lights were on. Jake burst through the door, Colt drawn. The diner was empty. Tables clean, chairs arranged, coffee pot full. Like Ruth had been preparing to open for the day. But something was wrong. Jake could feel it. He moved through the space, checking behind the counter. In the kitchen, nothing. Then he saw it. On the counter, beside the register, a note. Written in Ruth's handwriting, shaky and rushed. "They have me. Don't come. Protect Lily." Underneath, in different handwriting, blocky and aggressive. "Morrison. The old lady for you. Midnight. You know where. Come alone or she dies." Jake's vision tunneled. His hands shook. The paper crumpled in his fist. Tiny appeared beside him. "Jake, they took her. We'll get her back. They knew she'd come here. They were watching. Then we find them. We tear this town apart until... I know where they are." Jake's voice was hollow. He said, "I know where. There's only one place. The warehouse where we found the truck 6 months ago. The one on I-80. That's a trap. I know. You go in there alone, you're dead." "I know." Tiny grabbed Jake by the shoulders, forced him to meet his eyes. "Listen to me. We're not doing this alone. We call the sheriff. We call the FBI. There's no time. He said midnight. That's 15 hours from now. Anything could happen to her in 15 hours. So what's your plan? Walk in there with your gun and hope for the best? Jake pulled away, holstered his Colt, pulled out his phone. He called Sheriff Wade. The sheriff answered on the first ring. Jake, I told you not to. They took Ruth Coleman, Castellano's men. They want to trade her for me. A long pause. Where? The warehouse on I-80, the one where we found the trafficking truck. That's Fernley jurisdiction. I can't just... Then call Fernley. Call the FBI. Call whoever you need to call. But I'm telling you, if Ruth Coleman dies because of jurisdictional red tape, you and I are going to have a problem. Wade sighed. Where are you now? The diner. Stay there. I'm on my way. Jake hung up, looked at Tiny and Danny. Get back to the garage. Tell the others what happened. Tell them to be ready. Ready for what? War. Sheriff Wade arrived 30 minutes later with 2 deputies and a grim expression. He examined the note, took photos, called it in to Fernley PD in the FBI field office in Reno. They're mobilizing, Wade said, but it's going to take time. The FBI wants to set up surveillance, get a tactical team in place, negotiate. I don't have time, Jake said. You go in there half-cocked, you'll get Ruth killed. And if I wait, Castellano kills her anyway. Wade rubbed his face. He looked old, tired, 10 months from retirement and dealing with something way above his pay grade. Jake, I've known you since you were a kid. I knew your father. He was a good man. He wouldn't want you throwing your life away. My father taught me that some things are worth dying for. And Ruth Coleman is one of them? Jake thought about the note. Don't come. Protect Lily. Thought about Ruth sitting in her kitchen at 2 in the morning, shotgun beside her, telling him they were family. Yes, he said simply. Wade nodded. All right, but we do this smart. The FBI wants to coordinate with you. You're going to wear a wire. We'll have snipers positioned. The moment Castellano shows himself, we take him down. He won't show himself. He'll send his people. Then we take them down and work our way up. Jake looked out the diner window at the highway stretching into the distance. Somewhere out there, Ruth Coleman was being held by men who trafficked human beings like cattle. Men who tried to poison him, who targeted a 16-year-old girl, who thought the world was something they could buy and sell. His hand moved to the Zippo in his pocket. The metal was warm, worn smooth by decades of use. Through firefights and ambushes and long nights in the jungle wondering if he'd ever see home again. David Morrison had come home, had built a life, had found love twice, had raised a son, had died in his sleep in a house he'd bought with honest work. Jake wasn't sure he'd be that lucky, but he was damn sure going to try. All right, he said to Wade, we do it your way. But if anything goes wrong, if Ruth is in danger, I'm not waiting for the FBI's permission to pull the trigger. Fair enough. They spent the rest of the day planning. The FBI sent 2 agents, both young and serious, with tactical gear and communication equipment. They showed Jake aerial photos of the warehouse, entry points, sight lines, positioned their sniper teams on nearby buildings, coordinated with Fernley PD. By 8 o'clock, they had a plan. Jake would arrive at midnight as instructed, wearing a wire and a GPS tracker. He'd engage Castellano's people, try to confirm Ruth was alive, stall for time while the FBI moved into position. On Jake's signal, they'd breach. It was a good plan, professional, by the book. Jake didn't trust it for a second. At 9 o'clock, he left the sheriff's office and rode back to the garage. His brothers were waiting, along with Lily. The girl looked small and terrified, sitting on a folding chair in the back room, wrapped in a blanket. She looked up when Jake entered. Did you find her? Not yet, but I will. This is my fault. If I hadn't gone to that party, this is Castellano's fault, not yours. Lily started crying. Jake didn't know what to do. He wasn't good with kids. wasn't good with tears, but he sat down beside her, and after a moment, he put his arm around her shoulders. "Your grandmother is the toughest person I've ever met," he said quietly. "She saved my life yesterday. She's not going to let some punk with a gun scare her." "What if they hurt her?" "Then I hurt them worse." Lily looked up at him, saw something in his face that made her nod. Cisco appeared in the doorway. "Jake, we need to talk." Jake stood up, followed Cisco into the main garage. The other brothers were gathered around Wrench's laptop again. "Found something," Wrench said. "Been digging into Castellano's operation. The warehouse on I-80, the one where you found the truck, it's owned by a shell company. That shell company is owned by another shell company. 3 layers deep, but at the bottom, Vincent Castellano. So he owns the warehouse. That's not news." "No, but this is." Wrench pulled up another screen. "Security footage from a traffic camera on I-80 2 hours ago. Black Mercedes S-Class, Nevada vanity plates KNIGHT7, heading east toward Fernley. That's the car Marcus Webb described, the man who hired him." Jake leaned closer. The footage was grainy, but he could make out 2 figures in the front seats, driver and passenger. "Can you enhance the passenger?" "Already did." Wrench clicked a few keys. The image zoomed in, sharpened. The passenger was a woman with silver hair. Ruth. Jake's hands clenched into fists. "She's alive." "For now," Cisco said. "But Jake, if that car's going to the warehouse, that means Castellano's people are already there. Setting up. Waiting for you." "I know. The FBI's plan won't work. Castellano's not stupid. He'll have lookouts, cameras, booby traps. The moment the FBI gets close, he'll know, and Ruth will die." Tiny crossed his arms. "So what's the real plan?" Jake looked at his brothers. 6 men who'd followed him through hell more times than he could count. Men who'd become his family when his real family was a ghost. "The FBI thinks I'm going in alone at midnight," Jake said. "But I'm not waiting until midnight, and I'm not going alone." Preacher raised an eyebrow. "You want to go in early?" "I want to go in now, before they're ready, before they expect it." "That's suicide," Danny said. "Maybe, but it's Ruth's best chance." Cisco nodded slowly. "The FBI's going to be pissed." "Let them be pissed. I'm not letting Ruth die because we followed protocol." "So what do we need?" Tiny asked. Jake thought about the warehouse, thought about the layout, the entry points, the places where Castellano's men would be waiting. "We need a distraction, something big enough to draw their attention away from Ruth. And we need to move fast. Hit them before they realize what's happening." Wrench grinned. "I can make a distraction." "What kind?" "The kind that goes boom." Jake looked at him. "You have explosives?" "I have fertilizer, diesel fuel, and a very good understanding of chemistry." "Jesus Christ," Preacher muttered. "How long to make it?" 2 hours, maybe 3. Jake checked his watch. 10:15. If they left by 1 in the morning, they could be at the warehouse by 2. Hit them in the dead of night, when Castellano's people were tired, bored, off their guard. "Do it," Jake said. "Cisco, Danny, you're on recon. I want eyes on that warehouse. Find out how many men, where they're positioned, where they're holding Ruth. Tiny, Preacher, Billy, gear up. Western, body armor, anything you've got. This isn't a bar fight. This is war." The brothers scattered. Jake stood alone in the empty garage, listening to the sound of motorcycles being prepped, weapons being loaded, plans being made. He pulled out his phone. Almost called Sheriff Wade to tell him the plan had changed. Almost. Instead, he dialed a different number, Ruth's cell phone. It rang 4 times, then a voice answered. Not Ruth. A man's voice, smooth and cold. "Morrison, I was wondering when you'd call." "Castellano. The one and only. If you heard her, relax. Ruth is fine. Comfortable even. We're taking good care of her. She's quite the woman, you know. 72 years old, and she threatened to castrate my men with a butter knife. I like her spirit. Jake's grip on the phone tightened. Let her go. You know the deal. You for her. Midnight. Don't be late. How do I know she's still alive? A pause. Rustling. Then Ruth's voice, strained but strong. Jake, don't you dare come here. Don't you? The phone was yanked away. Castellano again. Satisfied? I'm coming, but not at midnight. Now. That's not how this works. You want me? Then you get me on my terms. I'm leaving now. I'll be there in 2 hours. You better be ready. Jake hung up before Castellano could respond. His phone rang immediately. He ignored it. Let it ring and ring until it went to voicemail. Then he texted Sheriff Wade. Change of plans. Going in early. Don't try to stop me. Wade called. Jake sent it to voicemail. He grabbed his leather vest, his Colt, 3 extra magazines, strapped a knife to his boot, clipped the Zippo lighter to his belt loop. Cisco and Danny returned from recon at 11:30. Their report was grim. The warehouse had at least 12 men visible, probably more inside. Perimeter guards with rifles. Floodlights on the main entrance. 2 SUVs parked out front, engines running. They'd spotted Ruth through a second-floor window, tied to a chair but alive. It's a fortress, Cisco said. We go in loud, we're all dead. Then we go in smart, Jake said. Wrench finished his distraction at midnight. 3 55-gallon drums filled with a mixture of diesel fuel, fertilizer, and scrap metal. Not enough to level a building, but enough to make a hell of a noise. Where do you want them? Wrench asked. East side of the warehouse, far from where they're holding Ruth. Set them on a timer, 15 minutes after we arrive. And then? Then we go in the west entrance while everyone's looking east. It was a simple plan, probably too simple, but simple meant fewer things could go wrong. At 12:30 in the morning, 7 men climbed onto 7 motorcycles. They didn't say goodbye to Lily, didn't leave letters or messages, just rode out into the Nevada night, engines howling, heading east on I-80. The warehouse came into view at 1:45. It sat alone in an industrial park, surrounded by empty lots and abandoned buildings. Exactly the kind of place where you could commit murder and nobody would hear the screams. Jake killed his headlight. The others did the same. They coasted the last quarter mile, parking their bikes behind a concrete barrier 300 yards from the warehouse. Wrench set the timers on his barrels. 12 minutes. Cisco and Tiny moved toward the west entrance. Weapons drawn, shadows in the darkness. Danny and Preacher circled to the north. Billy covered their rear. Jake moved alone toward the front entrance. He wanted to be seen, wanted Castellano's men to know he was here, because while they were focused on him, his brothers would be slipping in the back. The floodlights hit him when he was 50 yards out, bright and blinding. A voice over a loudspeaker. Morrison, stop right there. Jake stopped, raised his hands, stood in the light like a target. 2 men emerged from the warehouse, both carrying AR-15s, both young, cocky, stupid. You're early, one of them said. I don't like waiting. Boss isn't here yet. Then call him. The man hesitated, pulled out a phone, made a call, spoke quietly, hung up. He's on his way, says you wait here. Where's Ruth? Inside, safe. I want to see her. You'll see her when the boss says. Jake's hands were still raised, but his right hand was drifting slowly toward his hip, toward the Colt. 10 more seconds. Just 10 more seconds. The explosion came early. A massive fireball erupted from the east side of the warehouse, the sound like the world splitting open. Fire and smoke and debris raining down. The 2 guards spun toward the explosion, rifles raised, shouting into radios. Jake drew his Colt and shot them both. Center mass. 1, 2. They dropped. Then Jake was running, straight toward the warehouse. Cisco and Tiny appeared from the west entrance, weapons up, clearing rooms. Gunfire erupted, shouts, chaos. Jake hit the front door and kicked it open. Inside, the warehouse was a maze of shipping containers and metal shelves. Men were running toward the explosion, trying to figure out what happened. None of them saw Jake until it was too late. He moved through them like a ghost. 3 shots, 3 bodies. Up the stairs to the second floor, kicked open the door to the office. Ruth was there, tied to a chair, duct tape over her mouth, but alive. Her eyes went wide when she saw him. Jake crossed the room in 2 strides, pulled the tape off gently, started cutting the ropes with his knife. "I told you not to come," Ruth said. "Since when do I listen? They're going to kill you." "They can try." The ropes fell away. Ruth stood, wobbling but steady. Jake handed her a knife. "Can you move?" "I can run if I have to." "You might have to." They moved toward the door. Jake went first, Colt raised. The hallway was clear. Downstairs, the gunfight was still raging. He could hear Cisco shouting orders, Tiny's booming laughter, the staccato crack of rifles. Then the lights went out. Emergency lighting kicked in, bathing everything in red, and from the darkness, a voice. "Morrison." Jake turned. Vincent Castellano stood at the far end of the hallway, 55 years old, silver hair, expensive suit. He looked like a businessman, like someone you'd see at a country club. He was pointing a gun at Ruth. "Drop it," Castellano said calmly. Jake didn't move. "Drop the gun, Morrison, or I put a bullet in the old lady's head." "You shoot her, I shoot you." "Maybe, but she'll still be dead." Ruth's voice, steady and cold. "Shoot him, Jake." Castellano laughed. "God, she really doesn't quit, does she? I can see why your father loved her." Jake's finger tightened on the trigger. 1 shot, center mass. He could make it. But Castellano could make his shot too. At this distance, with Ruth beside him, the risk was too high. "What do you want?" Jake asked. "I want you to understand something. You cost me everything. My business, my reputation, my future, all because you couldn't mind your own business. Those were girls, children. They were merchandise, and you destroyed it. I'd do it again." Castellano's smile faded. "I know you would. That's why you have to die." He pulled the trigger. But Ruth moved faster than Jake thought possible. She threw herself sideways, knocking Castellano's aim off. The bullet hit the wall behind her. Jake fired. Once, twice, 3 times. Castellano went down. Jake ran forward, kicked the gun away from Castellano's hand. The man was still alive, gasping, blood spreading across his chest. "You're done," Jake said. Castellano coughed, blood on his lips. "You think killing me changes anything? It changes everything. There'll be others. There's always others. Then I'll kill them too." Castellano's eyes closed. His breathing stopped. Jake stood over the body of Vincent Castellano and felt nothing. No triumph, no relief, just exhaustion. Ruth appeared beside him, put her hand on his shoulder. "It's over." "Is it?" "For now." They made their way downstairs. The gunfight had ended. Cisco and Tiny had secured the building. 12 of Castellano's men were dead or surrendered. No casualties among the brothers. Outside, sirens wailed in the distance. The FBI finally arriving. Too late to help, but just in time to take credit. Sheriff Wade pulled up in his cruiser, lights flashing, jumped out and ran toward Jake. "What the hell did you do?" "What I had to." Wade looked at the warehouse, the bodies, the smoke still rising from Wrench's explosion. "This is going to be a nightmare of paperwork." "Then I guess you better get started." The FBI took over. Agents in tactical gear swept the warehouse, collected evidence, interviewed the survivors. They found Ruth's truck out back, found Marcus Webb's information in one of the dead men's phones, found enough evidence to tie Castellano to a dozen federal crimes. They also found something else. In a locked container in the back of the warehouse, They found 23 girls, ages 14 to 19. Some from Nevada, some from California, some from as far as Texas. All of them alive, all of them safe now. Jake watched them being let out, wrapped in blankets, crying and shaking. Watched FBI agents trying to comfort them, EMTs checking their vital signs. One of the girls, blonde, maybe 16, stopped in front of Jake. "Are you the one who saved us?" Jake shook his head. "I'm just the guy who pulled the trigger." "Thank you," she hugged him, quick and fierce, then moved on. Ruth appeared beside him again. "You did good. I killed 8 people tonight. 8 people who deserved it. Does that make it right?" Ruth was quiet for a long moment. "I don't know, but I know my granddaughter is safe. I know 23 girls are going home to their families. I know Vincent Castellano will never hurt anyone again. If that's not right, it's close enough." Jake looked at her. This 72-year-old woman who'd been kidnapped, threatened, used as bait, and still stood here with her head high and her eyes clear. "Thank you," he said. "For what?" "For not giving up on me, for trusting me, for being family." Ruth smiled. "Your father would be proud." "I hope so." Sheriff Wade approached, looking exhausted. "FBI wants to talk to you. All of you. It's going to be a long night." "We're not going anywhere," Jake said. As the sun rose over the Nevada desert, Jake Morrison sat on the hood of a patrol car, drinking terrible coffee from a paper cup, watching the organized chaos of a federal crime scene. His brothers were scattered around giving statements, being debriefed, probably lying about half of what happened. They'd get away with it. They always did. Ruth sat beside him, wrapped in a blanket, her truck keys in her hand. "I should get back to Lily," she said. "I'll take you. You're needed here. They can wait." They climbed onto Jake's Harley. Ruth wrapped her arms around his waist. He felt her shaking, just a little, the adrenaline finally wearing off. He drove slowly back to Carson City, taking the long way, letting the sunrise wash over them. By the time they reached the garage, Ruth had stopped shaking. Lily ran out to meet them, threw herself into Ruth's arms, sobbed. Ruth held her, stroked her hair, murmured the kinds of things grandmothers say. Jake stood apart, watching them. Family. Real family. The kind worth fighting for. Worth dying for. His phone rang. Sheriff Wade. "Jake, FDI wants to know if you're planning to cooperate with their investigation." "I'll tell them everything. Eventually." "That's what I thought. They're threatening to arrest you." "Let them try." Wade laughed. "Get some sleep, Jake. You've earned it." Jake hung up, looked at Ruth and Lily, looked at his brothers, still at the warehouse, cleaning up the mess. Sleep sounded good, but first there was something he needed to do. He walked into the garage, found the corner where his father's old toolbox sat, opened it. Inside, beneath wrenches and screwdrivers, was a photo. David Morrison in his Marine uniform, young, proud, ready to save the world. Jake pulled out the Zippo lighter, set it beside the photo. "I kept my promise, Dad," he said quietly. "I protected them, just like you taught me." The lighter gleamed in the morning sun. Outside, Ruth called his name. Jake closed the toolbox, walked back out into the light. The FBI kept Jake in an interrogation room for 6 hours. 2 agents, both young enough to be his kids, asking the same questions over and over. "How did you know Castellano would be at the warehouse? Why didn't you wait for backup? Who authorized the use of explosives? Why did you kill 8 men when non-lethal force was an option?" Jake answered every question the same way. "I did what I had to do." By noon, they let him go. No charges. The evidence was clear enough. Castellano had kidnapped Ruth Coleman, had attempted to murder Jake Morrison, had been running a trafficking operation that crossed state lines. The dead men at the warehouse had rap sheets longer than the highway. Self-defense. Defense of others. Justified use of force. The FBI didn't like it, but they couldn't argue with the results. 23 girls saved. A major trafficking ring destroyed. Vincent Castellano dead. Sheriff Wade drove Jake back to the garage. They rode in silence for most of the trip, the older man's hands steady on the wheel, his face lined with exhaustion. "You know this isn't over," Wade said finally. "I know." Castellano had partners, people who bankrolled him, people who bought from him. They're going to want revenge. Let them come. Wade glanced at him. "You really don't care if you die, do you?" Jake thought about that. Thought about the girl at the warehouse who'd hugged him, the 23 lives saved, Ruth safe with Lily. Thought about his father's Zippo in his pocket, warm against his ribs. "I care," he said quietly, "but I care more about doing what's right." Wade pulled into the garage parking lot. The other brothers were already there, their bikes lined up like soldiers at attention. They looked tired, beat to hell, but alive. "Your father would be proud of you," Wade said, "but he'd also tell you to be smart. Don't go looking for the next fight." "I won't, but I won't run from it either." Wade nodded, extended his hand. Jake shook it. 10 months till retirement," Wade said. "Try not to start a war before then." No promises. Jake climbed out of the cruiser, watched Wade drive away, turned to face his brothers. Tiny was the first to speak. "We did good." "We did," Jake agreed. "Lost some good bikes in that explosion, though," Wrench said mournfully. "That 47 knucklehead was a classic." "We'll get you another one." Cisco stepped forward. He had a cut above his eye, bandaged but still seeping. "Jake, we need to talk about what happens next." "What do you mean?" "I mean, we just went to war with a major trafficking organization. We killed their leader. You don't think there's going to be blowback?" Jake had thought about it. During the interrogation, during the silent ride back, during every quiet moment when his mind wasn't occupied with survival. Castellano was dead, but his network stretched across the country. Money, power, connections that didn't disappear just because one man took a bullet. "There'll be blowback," Jake said, "but we knew that going in." "Did we, though?" Danny asked. "I mean, I thought we were just rescuing Ruth. Didn't realize we were taking down an empire." "Sometimes you don't get to choose the size of the fight," Preacher said. "Sometimes the fight chooses you." Billy, who'd been quiet until now, spoke up. "So what's the plan? We just wait for them to come at us?" Jake looked at his brothers. 6 men who'd followed him into hell without question. 6 men who'd risked everything for a woman they barely knew, because Jake had asked them to. "We don't wait," Jake said. "We prepare. We fortify. We make sure everyone we care about is protected. And if they come, we're ready." "And Ruth and Lily?" Cisco asked. "They stay under our protection until we're sure the threat is gone." Tiny cracked his knuckles. "How long do you think that'll take?" "As long as it takes." They spent the rest of the day securing the garage. Wrench installed additional cameras, motion sensors, reinforced locks on every door. Danny and Billy did a sweep for bugs or tracking devices. Cisco contacted some old Special Forces buddies, put them on alert in case they needed backup. Jake went to check on Ruth and Lily. He found them in the back room. Ruth was making soup on a hot plate. The smell filling the small space was something close to comfort. Lily sat on the cot, knees pulled to her chest, staring at nothing. "How are you holding up?" Jake asked. Ruth stirred the soup without looking at him. "I've been better. I've been worse." "And Lily?" "She hasn't said much since we got back. I think it's finally hitting her. What almost happened. What did happen." Jake sat down on a folding chair. Lily glanced at him, then away. "Lily," he said gently, "you okay?" She shrugged. "You want to talk about it?" "What's there to talk about? I was stupid. I trusted someone I shouldn't have. People died because of me. People died because they were running a trafficking ring. That's on them, not you. But if I hadn't gone to that party, then Castellano would have found another way to get to me. This isn't your fault." Lily's eyes filled with tears. "Grandma could have died. You could have died. All because I wanted to go to some stupid party." Ruth set down the spoon. crossed to the cot, sat beside her granddaughter, and pulled her close. "Baby, listen to me. What happened wasn't your fault. You're 16 years old. You're supposed to make mistakes. You're supposed to trust people, to want to have fun, to test boundaries. That's normal. What's not normal is men like Castellano preying on girls like you." "But I should have known. I should have seen." "How?" Ruth's voice was firm but kind. "How were you supposed to know? Marcus was good at what he did. He made you feel special, made you feel seen. That's how predators work. They find the vulnerable places and they exploit them." Lily sobbed into Ruth's shoulder. Ruth held her, rocking slightly, the way she probably had when Lily was small. Jake stood up quietly, started to leave. "Jake," Ruth said. He stopped. "Thank you for everything." "You already thanked me." "I know, but I need to say it again. You saved my life. You saved Lily's life. You saved those 23 girls. I don't know how to repay that." Jake thought about his father, about the Zippo lighter, about the promise he'd made at the grave. "You already repaid it," he said. "The soup, the warning. You saved me first." Ruth smiled, small and sad. "I guess we're even then." "I guess we are." Jake left them there, walked back into the main garage. His brothers were still working, checking weapons, planning shifts, turning the garage into something between a fortress and a home. His phone rang, unknown number. Jake's hand moved to his Colt instinctively. He answered. "Yeah, Mr. Morrison," a woman's voice, professional, clipped. "My name is Agent Sarah Chen with the FBI. We need to meet." "We already met. I spent 6 hours in your interrogation room." "This is different. This is about what comes next." "What comes next is I go back to running my garage and you people leave me alone." "I wish it were that simple." A pause. "Castellano's organization is larger than we thought. We've been monitoring communications since last night. There are people who want revenge for what you did. Dangerous people. Let them come." "Mr. Morrison, I'm trying to help you." "Then tell me what you want." Another pause. "We want you to testify. Grand jury, federal case against Castellano's remaining partners. With your testimony, we can take down the entire network." Jake laughed. It wasn't a happy sound. "You want me to put a target on my back?" "The target's already there. At least this way, we can protect you." "I can protect myself." "Can you? Can you protect Ruth Coleman? Can you protect Lily? Can you protect your brothers in the chapter?" Jake's jaw tightened. "When's the grand jury?" 3 weeks. I'll send you the details." She hung up before he could respond. Jake stood there, phone in hand, staring at nothing. 3 weeks. 3 weeks to prepare, to fortify, to make sure everyone he cared about was safe. 3 weeks until he walked into a federal building and testified against some of the most dangerous people in the country. Cisco appeared beside him. "Trouble?" "FBI wants me to testify. Grand jury, 3 weeks." Cisco whistled low. "That's a death sentence." "Might be." "You gonna do it?" Jake thought about the 23 girls, thought about all the girls who'd come before them, who hadn't been saved, thought about all the girls who'd come after if he didn't stop this now. "Yeah," he said, "I'm gonna do it." The next 3 weeks passed in a blur. The garage became a second home for Ruth and Lily. Ruth helped Cisco cook meals for the brothers, helped Wrench organize supplies, helped turn the back room into something livable. Lily slowly came out of her shell, started talking again, started smiling. Jake spent his days maintaining bikes and his nights planning for what came next. The FBI provided some security, unmarked cars parked down the street, agents watching the garage. But Jake didn't trust them to keep his people safe. He trusted his brothers. They worked in shifts, 2 men awake at all times, watching cameras, patrolling the perimeter. Weapons were always close at hand. Nobody came or went without being cleared first. On the 10th day, they got their first test. It was 2 in the morning. Jake was asleep in the office when Wrench's voice crackled over the radio. "Jake, we got movement. 2 vehicles. approaching from the south. Jake was up instantly, grabbed his Colt, his vest, ran to the security monitors. Two black SUVs, no plates, tinted windows. They slowed as they passed the garage, then sped up and drove away. "Just recon," Cisco said. "They're testing us, seeing what kind of security we have." "They'll be back," Jake said. They came back 4 days later. Same vehicles, same time of night. But this time, they didn't just drive past. They stopped half a block away. Doors opened. 6 men got out, all armed. Jake watched on the monitors. "Wake everyone up, now." Within 2 minutes, every brother was armed and in position. Tiny and Preacher at the front entrance. Danny and Billy at the back. Wrench on the cameras. Cisco beside Jake. The 6 men approached the garage, spread out in a tactical formation. Professional. Military. Jake picked up his radio. Clicked it twice. The signal. Floodlights blazed to life. The 6 men froze, caught in the glare. Jake's voice boomed over the garage's PA system. "You're on private property. Leave now or we defend it." For a long moment, nobody moved. Then one of the men, clearly the leader, pulled out a phone, made a call, spoke quietly, hung up. He looked directly at the camera, smiled, gave a small salute. Then the 6 men got back in their SUVs and drove away. "That was a message," Cisco said. "I know. They're telling us they can get to us whenever they want." "I know. So what do we do?" Jake thought about it, thought about the grand jury in 10 days, thought about Ruth and Lily sleeping in the back room, trusting him to keep them safe. "We send a message back," Jake said. The next morning, Jake called Agent Chen. "I need a favor," he said. "What kind of favor?" "I need to know who sent those men last night. I need names, addresses, everything." "Mr. Morrison, I can't just give you that information. You want my testimony? Then you help me protect my people. Otherwise, I walk." A long silence. Then, "I'll see what I can do." She called back 2 hours later. "The men from last night work for a man named Thomas Driscoll. He was Castellano's business partner, handled the financial side of the operation. We've been trying to build a case against him for years, but he's careful. Clean. Not that clean if he's sending armed men to my garage. We don't have proof it was him. I have 6 witnesses and security footage, which shows 6 men standing on a public street. That's not a crime." Jake's grip on the phone tightened. "So you're telling me you can't help?" "I'm telling you that if you do anything illegal, I can't protect you. I'm not asking for protection, I'm asking for justice." "Then testify. Help us put these people away the right way." Jake hung up. He sat in the office for a long time, thinking. The right way. The legal way. The way that took years and let dangerous men walk free on technicalities. His father's voice echoed in his head. "A man is only as strong as his promises." Jake had made a promise to protect Ruth, to protect Lily, to protect his brothers, to stop men like Castellano from destroying lives. Sometimes the right way wasn't the legal way. That night, Jake called a chapter meeting. All 7 brothers gathered in the back room. Ruth and Lily were asked to stay in the office with the door closed. "We've got a problem," Jake said. "Thomas Driscoll, he's the money behind Castellano's operation. He's the one who sent those men to intimidate us. And he's going to keep sending men until we're dead or scared enough to run." "So we kill him," Tiny said simply. "We can't just kill him. He's a businessman, high profile. FBI's watching him. We kill him, we go to prison." "Then what do we do?" Danny asked. Jake pulled out his phone, showed them a photo Agent Chen had sent. Thomas Driscoll, 53 years old, silver hair, expensive suit. He looked like someone's grandfather. He looked harmless. "We make him confess," Jake said. "On record. We get him to admit what he's done, and we give it to the FBI. Let them do their job." Cisco raised an eyebrow. "And how exactly do we get him to confess?" "We ask him nicely." Preacher laughed. "That's not going to work. Then we ask him not so nicely. They spent the next 2 days planning. Wrench tracked Driscoll's movements, found his patterns. Every Tuesday and Thursday, Driscoll played golf at an exclusive country club outside Reno. He drove himself, no security, just an expensive car and an inflated ego. On Thursday morning, Jake and Cisco were waiting in the parking lot. Driscoll emerged from the clubhouse at 11:15, golf bags slung over his shoulder, whistling. He opened the trunk of his Mercedes, started loading his clubs. Jake approached from behind. "Mr. Driscoll." Driscoll spun around, saw Jake, saw Cisco. His face went pale. "I don't know who you are, but..." "Yeah, you do. I'm Jake Morrison, the man who killed your business partner, the man your goons tried to intimidate last week." Driscoll's hand moved toward his pocket. Cisco grabbed his wrist. "I wouldn't." "What do you want?" Jake pulled out a small recording device, set it on the hood of the Mercedes. Hit record. "I want you to tell me about your partnership with Vincent Castellano. I want you to tell me about the trafficking operation. I want you to tell me everything." Driscoll laughed. "You're insane. I'm not telling you anything. I'm calling the police." "Go ahead, call them. Tell them 2 bikers approached you in a parking lot. See if they care." "You're threatening me." "I'm offering you a chance to do the right thing." "Or what?" Jake leaned in close. "Or I make sure every detail of your operation gets leaked to the press. Every transaction, every girl you bought and sold, every dollar you made off human suffering. I burn your reputation to the ground." Driscoll's facade cracked. "You don't have proof." "I have enough. Castellano kept records. The FBI found them. And I know people who can make sure those records end up in the right hands." "That's blackmail. That's justice." They stood there, locked in a silent battle of wills. Driscoll was sweating now, his expensive suit suddenly looking too tight. "If I talk," Driscoll said quietly, "they'll kill me." "Probably, but at least you'll die with a clean conscience." "I don't have a conscience." "Then die knowing you couldn't buy your way out of this one." Driscoll looked at the recording device, looked at Jake, made a decision. He talked. For 20 minutes, he told them everything. The financial structure of the operation. The shell companies used to launder money. The buyers, the sellers, the routes, names, dates, amounts, all of it recorded. When he was done, Jake picked up the device. "Thank you for your cooperation." "What happens now?" "Now you turn yourself in to the FBI. You give them this recording. You testify. And if I don't, then this recording goes public, and you spend whatever time you have left watching your empire crumble." Driscoll's shoulders sagged. He looked old suddenly, tired. "I built something," he said quietly. "It wasn't legal, but it was mine. It was power." "You built it on the backs of children," Jake said. "There's no pride in that." He left Driscoll standing in the parking lot, holding his golf clubs, staring at nothing. 3 days later, Thomas Driscoll walked into the FBI field office in Reno and surrendered. He brought his lawyers, his accountant, and a full confession. The FBI took it all, started making arrests within hours. Agent Chen called Jake that afternoon. "I don't know what you did," she said, "but thank you. I just had a conversation. A conversation that's going to take down one of the largest trafficking networks in the country." "Good. The grand jury hearing is in 4 days. You still willing to testify?" "Yeah, I'll be there. We'll provide security, full protection. I'll bring my own, thanks." The day before the grand jury hearing, Ruth came to find Jake in the garage. He was working on a Harley, hands covered in grease, mind focused on the simple mechanics of engine and metal. "Can we talk?" she asked. Jake wiped his hands on a rag. "Sure." They walked outside into the late afternoon sun. The desert stretched out around them, endless and empty. "I'm scared," Ruth said. "Of what?" "Of what happens after you testify. You're putting yourself in danger. You're putting all of us in danger." "I know." "Then why do it?" Jake thought about how to answer. Thought about his father, about the Marines, about the promise he'd made to protect those who couldn't protect themselves. Because if I don't, he said finally, then what was the point? We saved 23 girls. That's good. But there are hundreds more out there. Thousands. And the only way to save them is to destroy the people running this thing, all the way to the top. And if they kill you, then I die knowing I tried. Ruth was quiet for a long moment. Your father used to say something similar. He'd say that some things are worth dying for. I always hated when he said that. But you understood it. I understood it. Didn't mean I liked it. She reached into her pocket, pulled out the Zippo lighter, the one with David Morrison's initials engraved on the side. He carried this all the time, she said, through every firefight, every patrol, every long night when he thought he'd never see home again. He said it reminded him what he was fighting for. She pressed it into Jake's palm. You already have it, but I want you to remember why. You're not fighting because you want to. You're fighting because you have to, because no one else will. Jake closed his fingers around the lighter, felt its weight, its warmth. I'll come back, he said. You better. Lily's already planning to go to UCLA next year. She needs someone to help her move. Jake smiled. I'll be there. The next morning, Jake Morrison walked into the federal courthouse in Reno, wearing his leather vest, his Colt holstered at his hip, flanked by 6 brothers from the Hells Angels Carson City chapter. The FBI agents looked nervous. The prosecutors looked uncomfortable. The grand jury looked fascinated. Jake took the stand, placed his hand on the Bible, swore to tell the truth, and then he told them everything. He told them about Vincent Castellano, about the trafficking ring, the girls, the warehouse. He told them about Thomas Driscoll, about the financial network, about the buyers and sellers. He told them about Marcus Webb, about the parties, about the systematic way these men preyed on children. He spoke for 3 hours, answered every question, provided every detail. When it was over, the grand jury voted to indict 17 people on federal trafficking charges. Jake walked out of the courthouse into the sunlight. His brothers were waiting. Ruth and Lily, too, standing beside Cisco's bike. How'd it go? Tiny asked. It went, Jake said. They rode back to Carson City in formation. 7 Harleys and 1 pickup truck, cruising down Highway 50 like they owned it. At the garage, they found something unexpected. A crowd. Maybe 50 people standing in the parking lot. Parents holding photos of missing daughters. Sisters holding pictures of lost siblings. Wives holding pictures of husbands who tried to stop the trafficking and ended up dead. Sheriff Wade was there too, keeping the peace. One woman stepped forward, middle-aged, tears streaming down her face. She was holding a photo of a teenage girl. My daughter, she said. Emily. She was one of the 23 you saved. She's home now, safe, because of you. She hugged Jake. He stood there awkwardly, not sure what to do, until Ruth whispered, hug her back. He did. More people came forward, more stories, more photos, more gratitude. By the time the crowd dispersed, the sun was setting. Jake stood in the empty parking lot, feeling hollowed out and full at the same time. Ruth approached. You okay? I don't know. That's fair. They stood together in the fading light. Lily joined them, then Cisco, then the other brothers. One by one they gathered. Family, not by blood, but by choice. What happens now? Lily asked. Jake thought about it. Thought about the grand jury, the indictments, the trials that would come. Thought about the enemies still out there, the people who'd want revenge. Now, he said, we go back to normal. We run the garage. We eat breakfast at the diner. We live. Just like that? Just like that. Ruth smiled. Your father would approve. 3 months later, Coleman's diner reopened. Ruth had been closed for weeks, dealing with the aftermath, testifying, healing. But now she was back. Apron on, coffee pot in hand. The first customers through the door were Jake and his brothers. 7 men in leather vests, sitting in their usual booths, ordering their usual meals. Ruth brought Jake his steak and eggs, set it down with a smile. "Thank you, ma'am," Jake said. "You're welcome." She started to walk away. "Ruth," she turned back, "I want to ask you something about my dad, about what he was like at the end." Ruth sat down across from him. "What do you want to know? Was he happy? Did he have regrets?" Ruth thought about it. "He was happy. He loved this place, loved Carson City, loved the life we built. But yes, he had regrets. He regretted not seeing you more, not being there when you needed him. I was the one who wasn't there. He knew that. He understood. But it still hurt him." Jake nodded. "I regret it too." "I know you do, but Jake, you need to hear this. Your father's last words, the last thing he said before the heart attack took him, he was sitting right here in this diner. He looked at me and he said, 'Jake's going to be fine. He's going to find his way. He's going to be the man I raised him to be.'" Jake's throat tightened. "He was right," Ruth continued. "You found your way. You became the man he raised you to be. A protector, a fighter, someone who stands up when everyone else sits down. I killed people. You saved more than you killed. That's what matters." Jake pulled out the Zippo lighter, set it on the table between them. "He was wrong about one thing. I'm not fine. I probably never will be." Ruth picked up the lighter, turned it over in her hands. "Fine is overrated. Good is what matters. And you, Jake Morrison, are good." She handed the lighter back. Jake pocketed it, looked around the diner, saw his brothers laughing at some joke Tiny had told, saw Lily behind the counter, helping Ruth out on weekends, saving money for UCLA. Saw Sheriff Wade come through the door, waving, heading for his usual stool. Saw normalcy, peace, home. "Yeah," he said quietly, "maybe I am." 6 months after the courthouse testimony, the trials concluded. 17 people convicted on federal trafficking charges, sentences ranging from 20 years to life. The network was broken, not destroyed but damaged badly enough that it would take years to rebuild. Jake attended every trial, testified when needed, watched as the people who'd tried to kill him, who'd kidnapped Ruth, who'd targeted Lily, were led away in handcuffs. Justice, real justice, the legal kind. It felt good. On the day of the final verdict, Jake rode out to the cemetery where his father was buried, stood in front of the headstone. David Morrison, U.S. Marine, 1945 to 2010, loving husband and father. "I did what you taught me, Dad," Jake said. "I stood up. I fought. I protected people who couldn't protect themselves. I made mistakes. I killed people I probably shouldn't have. But I also saved people who deserve saving." He pulled out the Zippo, flicked it open. The flame caught, steady and bright. "Ruth told me your last words, that you believed in me. That meant something, still means something." He closed the lighter, set it on the headstone just for a moment. "I'm not sure what comes next, but I know I'm not done. There are more fights out there, more people who need help, and I'm going to keep showing up." He picked up the lighter, pocketed it. "Semper Fi, Dad, always faithful." The wind picked up, rustling through the desert scrub. Jake stood there for a long time, saying goodbye to a ghost. Then he walked back to his Harley, fired it up, rode back toward Carson City, toward the garage, toward the family he'd built from broken pieces. A year after Vincent Castellano died, Coleman's Diner held a celebration. Not for anything specific, just for being alive, for being together, for surviving. Ruth made her famous soup. Lily helped serve. The entire chapter came, along with Sheriff Wade, Agent Chen from the FBI, and some of the families whose daughters had been saved. They filled the small diner to capacity, laughing, talking, sharing stories. Jake stood in the corner, watching. Cisco appeared beside him. "You did good, brother," Cisco said. "We did good. What's next for you?" Jake thought about it. The garage was running well. The chapter was strong. Ruth and Lily were safe. The trafficking network was broken. "I don't know," he said honestly. "Guess I'll figure it out as I go." That's the Morrison way. They stood together, two aging bikers, watching the celebration, watching life continue despite everything that had tried to stop it. Ruth caught Jake's eye from across the diner, raised her coffee cup in a toast. Jake raised his in return. To survival, to family, to the promise that some things are worth fighting for, to the men and women who stand up when the world tells them to sit down, to justice, messy and imperfect and hard-won, to coming home. As the sun set over Carson City, Jake Morrison stepped outside, pulled out his father's Zippo, lit it, watched the flame dance in the Nevada wind. Somewhere out there, evil still existed. Men like Castellano, like Driscoll, preying on the innocent. But somewhere out there, people like Jake existed too. Imperfect, damaged, scarred, but willing to fight, willing to stand, willing to say, enough. The lighter flame held steady. Jake closed it, pocketed it, walked back inside to the warmth and noise of family. Behind him, the desert stretched into darkness. Ahead, the small diner glowed like a beacon. Home, not perfect, but his, and worth every sacrifice it took to protect it. The story of Jake Morrison, Ruth Coleman, and the Hells Angels Carson City chapter didn't end that night. It continued in 1,000 small ways. In breakfasts shared every Wednesday, in late-night conversations about life and loss, in Lily's acceptance letter to UCLA, in the slow, patient work of healing. But the war was over. The promise was kept. And sometimes in a world that often felt dark and hopeless, that was enough. Jake Morrison stood at the threshold of Coleman's diner, one hand on the door, the Zippo lighter warm in his pocket. He thought about his father, about the girls who'd been saved, about the family he'd found in the unlikeliest of places. Thought about the long road that had led him here, from the deserts of Iraq to the highways of Nevada, from lost and broken to found and whole. "Don't talk," Ruth had said that first morning, her hand on his shoulder, saving his life with 4 quiet words. Jake smiled. Sometimes the most important things didn't need words at all. Sometimes they just needed someone willing to act. He pushed open the door and stepped back inside, into the light and warmth and noise of the people who'd become his reason for fighting. The door closed behind him. Outside, the Nevada night settled in, vast and quiet. Inside, life continued. And that, Jake Morrison thought, was the whole point.